The motorcycle world is shifting, and Harley-Davidson is right at the center of the storm. For years, dealerships pushed overpriced bikes, ridiculous loans, and hidden fees, thinking they could get away with it. Now it's all crashing down, and riders are hitting back hard. Here's how it all unraveled. What's happening? Before the 2010s, Harley-Davidson motorcycles stood as symbols of working-class freedom. Owning a Harley was more than just a purchase. It was a statement of independence, rebellion, and belonging to a community that thrived on the thrill of the open road. These motorcycles weren't just machines, they were lifestyles. Affordable models like the Sportster and Softail appealed to a wide range of riders, from blue-collar workers to weekend enthusiasts. However, something changed around the early 2010s. Harley dealerships, recognizing the brand's iconic status, saw an opportunity to push prices upward. What began as small, almost negligible price hikes soon escalated into more substantial increases. Dealerships didn't just want to make more money, they wanted to change how buyers perceived value. This wasn't just about selling bikes at higher prices, it was about manipulating expectations. Through targeted marketing campaigns, Harley dealers created an illusion that the new prices weren't just normal, they were justified. Phrases like premium quality and legendary craftsmanship became common in ads, subtly suggesting that these bikes were worth the inflated cost. Slowly but surely, riders became accustomed to the idea that paying more for a Harley wasn't just acceptable, it was expected. The pandemic gave dealerships the perfect opportunity to push this illusion further. With global supply chains disrupted, dealerships warned riders that prices would skyrocket due to scarcity. Buy now before it's too late became the rallying cry, as dealers framed inflated costs as inevitable. Fear of missing out became a powerful sales tool, convincing riders to act fast rather than risk higher prices tomorrow. But here's the problem. This illusion wasn't just about the bikes, it was about fundamentally changing consumer expectations. What was once considered overpriced gradually became normalized. And as prices rose, buyers felt they were investing in something legendary, not realizing they were being slowly conditioned to accept exploitation. The illusion wasn't just about selling motorcycles at higher prices, it was about reshaping how consumers perceive the value of Harley-Davidson itself. But this wasn't just clever marketing, it was manipulation. And now, the riders are done playing. While the illusion held strong, dealers were quietly setting a trap that would put buyers in financial shackles. The loan trap, financing freedom or financial prison. If price inflation was the gateway, financing was the prison. Here's how dealerships trapped buyers one payment at a time. As Harley prices rose, fewer buyers could afford to pay up front. Riding a Harley had become a costly dream, and dealerships knew they had to make the financial leap seem manageable. The solution? Long-term financing, sold as a way to ride now and pay later. On paper, it seemed simple. A manageable monthly payment stretched out over 5, 6, or even 7 years. But the reality was far more insidious. A $22,000 Harley financed over 7 years could end up costing closer to $40,000 by the end of the term. Why? High interest rates, sometimes as high as 12%, combined with extended payment periods, created a financial trap. Riders thought they were getting a deal because the monthly cost seemed affordable. In truth, they were committing to years of payments on a bike that was steadily depreciating. Younger riders, often the most passionate about the Harley lifestyle, were hit the hardest. Many lacked strong credit scores, making them easy targets for predatory loan structures. Dealers, keen to make the sale, framed these long-term loans as gateways to freedom, emphasizing the thrill of the ride rather than the long-term financial commitment. Even more deceptive were the reassurances. Dealers often suggested that refinancing would be possible in a few years once the bike's value supposedly increased. But refinancing rarely panned out, especially as the bikes lost value faster than payments could keep up. Riders found themselves stuck, paying thousands more than the bike was worth with no realistic way out. The most damaging aspect was the false sense of security. Dealers framed long loans as an opportunity to live the dream now and worry about costs later. But that later never really arrived, as payments dragged on for years, often leaving riders financially exhausted and resentful. Financing became less about affordability and more about maximizing dealership profits at the expense of long-term customer loyalty. But the loans weren't the only trick dealerships used to keep control, there was something even more deceptive: hidden fees and the phantom bike phenomenon. Dealerships didn't just inflate prices, they buried extra costs in plain sight. For many riders, buying a Harley wasn't just about the bike, it was about the experience. Walking into a dealership, seeing the shiny new models, hearing the engines roar, this was all part of the thrill. But that excitement often blinded buyers to the reality. The manufacturer's suggested retail price was just the starting point. The real cost ballooned with added fees. One of the most notorious charges was the destination fee, sometimes as high as $2,000, allegedly covering transportation costs from the factory. Then came dealer prep fees, which could add another $800 for what amounted to basic setup. Market adjustment fees, charges tacked on simply because a model was popular, could spike costs by $4,000 or more. Finance managers were often trained to slide these fees into the paperwork subtly. A quick signature here, an initial there, and suddenly the price had climbed by thousands. Riders, caught up in the excitement, rarely noticed until the deal was done. Worse still were the phantom bikes. Dealers would keep popular models hidden in the back, creating the illusion of scarcity. They would stage sold tags on bikes that weren't actually purchased, making buyers think they needed to act fast or miss out. This artificial scarcity made riders willing to pay more, just to feel like they were securing something special. The dealership strategy was simple: overwhelm buyers with excitement and paperwork, making the real cost a secondary consideration. Only later would the reality set in, leaving many to wonder why their new ride cost so much more than expected. The high prices weren't just due to demand, they were deliberately inflated through manipulative practices and hidden fees. But even as riders started catching on, dealerships had one more move left: a calculated game to keep buyers locked in. We've done the research, talked to riders, and exposed how Harley-Davidson dealerships got themselves into this mess. If you appreciate real, unfiltered content, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Riders realized the scam. The quiet backlash begins. The first act of rebellion wasn't a protest, it was a pause. As stories of inflated prices and shady loans spread, riders began to connect the dots. Online forums and community pages buzzed with discussions about dealership tricks. Videos exposing hidden fees and explaining how loans spiraled out of control went viral. The collective realization set in: riders had been played. Instead of storming dealerships, they did something more impactful. They stopped buying. Sales numbers started to drop, especially on new models. Riders began gravitating toward used bikes, shared directly between enthusiasts without dealership interference. Online marketplaces flourished as more people looked for alternatives to buying new. Social media became a hub for resistance. Dedicated pages exposed dealerships that practiced deceptive sales tactics, and hashtags calling out predatory practices began to trend. Riders encouraged each other to support independent mechanics and local garages rather than official dealerships. Dealers noticed. Showrooms became quieter. Inventory that once sold out within weeks now gathered dust. Incentives reappeared. Lower financing rates, bundled maintenance deals, but the trust had been broken. The power of collective awareness became a force stronger than any dealership strategy. But while the dealers saw their strategy crumbling, they didn't anticipate where the real backlash would come from. Dealers in distress. The inventory crisis. When Harley-Davidson dealerships pushed prices higher and higher, they expected loyal customers to keep buying no matter the cost. After all, Harley wasn't just selling motorcycles, it was selling a lifestyle, an icon of American freedom on two wheels. But as reality set in, the flaws in this approach became brutally clear. Dealerships had stocked up, banking on the assumption that high prices wouldn't slow down demand. Rows of brand new cruisers, baggers, and touring models lined showroom floors, each gleaming under the lights, waiting for a rider willing to pay a premium. Initially, this strategy seemed to work. Customers lined up, desperate to own a Harley, even if it meant stretching their budgets to the limit. But the tipping point came quicker than anyone expected. As inflation soared and the economy tightened, consumers became more cautious. Showrooms that once bustled with excited buyers became eerily quiet. Instead of selling out, dealerships found themselves drowning in unsold inventory. Bikes that had once sparked bidding wars now sat silently, collecting dust. Financial pressure started to mount as dealers realized they had loan payments on these idle bikes. The bikes had been financed with the expectation of quick turnover, but instead, they remained stuck in the showroom, depreciating in value day by day. Cash flow dried up as the costs of maintaining the inventory outpaced any revenue. Desperate to cut their losses, some dealerships slashed prices, hoping that heavy discounts would attract buyers. But the problem was deeper than just affordability. The public perception had shifted. Riders were no longer willing to pay inflated prices, no matter how much the bikes were marked down. In some cases, even drastic price cuts weren't enough to move units, leaving dealers in financial limbo. The strategy of maximizing profit per bike had backfired. Dealers had hoped to capitalize on a loyal customer base, but when the economic reality hit, it became clear that the plan had been short-sighted. Inventory piled up, and with it, financial strain that threatened to shutter more than a few dealerships. But financial losses weren't just affecting dealers, the ripple effects reached manufacturers too. Labor struggles, the human cost of financial collapse. Inside struggling Harley-Davidson dealerships, employees felt the strain of collapsing sales. Managers pushed sales teams harder than ever, demanding unattainable targets despite dwindling foot traffic. Commission structures were slashed and hourly wages stagnated. The pressure to hit numbers turned once passionate salespeople into stressed, overworked individuals just trying to hold on to their jobs. As morale sank, union movements began to stir among mechanics and sales staff. Some workers took to social media, sharing stories of burnout and low pay. The narrative spread rapidly, uniting employees from different states who faced the same hardships. These movements weren't just about money, they were about respect and basic dignity in the workplace. Dealership owners, however, pushed back. Some issued layoff threats or dismissed vocal workers outright, hoping to silence dissent. Others implemented anti-union policies, hoping to break up collective efforts before they gained traction. The backlash didn't stop the movement, it fueled it. Stories of unfair treatment went viral, drawing public support. Riders who sympathized with dealership workers started questioning Harley's management more critically, further eroding brand loyalty. As workers take a stand, the pressure on Harley-Davidson grows even more intense. Legislative crackdown. Governments step in. For years, motorcycle dealerships, particularly those selling Harley-Davidson bikes, got away with practices that pushed consumers to their financial limits. From hidden fees to deceptive financing terms, dealerships played the long game. But as consumer frustration reached its peak, state and federal governments could no longer turn a blind eye. The legal backlash wasn't just inevitable, it was overdue. States like California, New York, and Texas took the lead in introducing consumer protection laws aimed specifically at motorcycle dealerships. These new regulations set clear limits on hidden fees and enforced transparent pricing. No longer could dealerships tack on vague market adjustment fees that inflated the final price by thousands of dollars. The laws also regulated financing terms, preventing the kind of long-term, high-interest loans that left riders underwater within just a few years. The Federal Trade Commission joined the fight, launching investigations into dealerships accused of predatory financing and misleading marketing. Harley-Davidson itself faced multiple class action lawsuits from disgruntled buyers who claimed they were tricked into paying more than they bargained for. Consumer rights groups rallied to demand compensation for those overcharged, arguing that the financial strain caused by these practices went far beyond mere buyer's remorse. However, Harley-Davidson and dealership associations didn't take these measures lightly. They mounted aggressive lobbying campaigns, arguing that these new regulations would cripple small businesses, especially in rural areas where motorcycle sales played a vital economic role. Industry leaders claimed that stricter laws would lead to job losses and the closing of family-owned dealerships. Yet, public sentiment was overwhelmingly on the side of tougher regulations. Riders, many of whom had felt exploited for years, took to social media to share stories of financial strain. They flooded forums with tales of how dealerships manipulated them into long-term debt with little recourse. As more stories surfaced, the demand for holding dealerships accountable grew louder. It wasn't just about money, it was about restoring a sense of fairness. The legal crackdown highlights a critical divide between corporate interest and consumer protection. Dealerships argued for economic survival, but riders saw the laws as long overdue justice. As dealerships fight for survival, consumers find their voices are finally being heard. The consumer awakening. Riders become savvy shoppers. In the wake of dealership scandals, riders have evolved from passive consumers to informed, strategic shoppers. The days of blindly trusting dealerships are over. Now, riders are arming themselves with knowledge, leveraging technology, and building community networks to ensure they get a fair deal. Online forums like the Harley Owners Group have become hubs for exposing dealership tricks and sharing practical advice. Social media pages dedicated to motorcycling are filled with posts detailing bad experiences, complete with tips on avoiding the same pitfalls. YouTube channels specifically focus on breaking down complex financing terms and highlighting red flags that potential buyers should watch for. It's a new era of consumer empowerment. Riders are also turning to technology to outsmart dealerships. Apps that compare prices between dealerships, reveal hidden fees, and track financing offers have become essential tools for savvy shoppers. More and more riders are opting for direct-to-consumer models when possible, choosing to purchase motorcycles directly from manufacturers. Brands like Harley's electric division and BMW's online customization options offer a hassle-free, transparent purchasing process, appealing to those who want to avoid dealership games. As new models continue to skyrocket in price, many riders are shifting their focus to the used and vintage bike markets. Buying a used motorcycle has become not just a practical decision, but a statement against dealership exploitation. Older bikes, with their simpler mechanics and lack of excessive tech, are experiencing a resurgence. Riders value their durability and the sense of independence that comes with maintaining and customizing them. Community accountability has become a powerful tool. Rider clubs publicly name and shame dealerships known for unfair practices, compiling ratings based on customer experiences. Consumer advocacy groups maintain lists of trustworthy dealerships, helping new riders make informed decisions. Through collective vigilance, riders are ensuring that dealerships can no longer operate unchecked. The power shift is undeniable. Riders who once blindly trusted dealerships now demand better. By staying informed and connected, they are actively shaping a fairer market. But as riders grow smarter, the last chapter of Harley reveals the ultimate test of survival. The community rises, building a new riding culture. Motorcycle culture has always thrived on a sense of freedom and brotherhood, but with dealerships increasingly seen as profit-driven corporations rather than community hubs, riders are taking matters into their own hands. As the traditional dealership model crumbles, grassroots initiatives are stepping in to fill the void, fostering a new kind of riding culture, one driven by passion, not profit. In cities and rural areas alike, grassroots motorcycle events are on the rise. These events celebrate classic and affordable bikes rather than the latest high-tech models that often come with inflated price tags. Vintage motorcycle rallies have become more than just a gathering. They are now symbols of resistance against commercial exploitation. Riders come together to showcase their retro builds, swap parts, and share stories about the joy of maintaining a simple, reliable machine. Community garages are also emerging as vital spaces for riders. These shared workspaces allow bikers to maintain and repair their own bikes without dealership intervention. Riders bring their own tools, share expertise, and pass down mechanical knowledge. It is not just about fixing bikes, it is about building connections. For many, working on their machines alongside fellow riders is a far more authentic experience than visiting a dealership service center. Social media has become a powerful tool for uniting riders who feel disillusioned by corporate tactics. Online groups and forums focus on promoting responsible buying practices, sharing tips on avoiding financing traps, and exposing predatory dealership behaviors. Content creators are stepping up as advocates for the community, creating videos that educate riders on how to negotiate fair deals or how to service their own bikes. The online solidarity among riders is not just vocal, it is actionable. At the heart of this new culture is a revival of heritage. Riders are not just preserving classic models, they are honoring a mindset. The push for maintaining and customizing older bikes is as much about rejecting modern consumerism as it is about embracing tradition. In a time when new bikes are often laden with unnecessary tech, the simple pleasure of a vintage ride feels like a rebellion. The spirit of riding thrives through community-driven efforts, not corporate dominance. As riders take ownership of the culture, they find freedom not just on the road, but in how they define the experience. Harley's final stand. Can the iconic brand adapt? Harley-Davidson has always been synonymous with the American riding spirit. The rumble of a Harley engine and the iconic silhouette of its cruisers are instantly recognizable symbols of freedom. But now, the brand is in crisis. After years of pushing overpriced bikes and locking customers into endless financing, Harley is facing backlash not just from the industry, but from its most loyal fans. To address this, Harley-Davidson is taking drastic measures. One of the first moves is revamping its lineup to appeal to a broader demographic. New models focus on affordability and simplicity, lightweight cruisers and stripped-down versions of their classic bikes. The idea is to reconnect with younger riders who see traditional Harley models as financially out of reach. Harley is cutting down on tech features, aiming to return to the basics that made the brand iconic in the first place. Rebuilding trust has become essential. Harley is rolling out a series of customer-focused initiatives, including refunds and extended support for those caught in past financing traps. They are also partnering with rider groups to get direct feedback on what consumers truly want. In some dealerships, new pricing transparency initiatives are being tested, showing the cost breakdown up front to eliminate surprises. Yet, not everyone is convinced. Many within the riding community feel that Harley's changes are too little, too late. The brand's previous reputation for exploitation has left a mark that will not fade overnight. Loyal customers may welcome the changes, but attracting new riders, especially those skeptical of Harley's corporate intentions, remains a significant challenge. Harley is also facing stiff competition from brands like Royal Enfield and Indian, which are already established as affordable alternatives. To survive, Harley must not just adapt, but fundamentally transform its relationship with riders, both new and old. Harley can only survive if it embraces change while honoring its roots. If Harley listens, it might just preserve its legacy. If not, it risks fading into irrelevance. Dealerships that learn to put riders first are not just surviving, they're thriving. But while some dealerships reinvent themselves, manufacturers are also forced to rethink their approach. The manufacturer shift, making bikes for real riders. Manufacturers are realizing that pushing overly complex, expensive bikes is alienating their core audience. To stay relevant, they are returning to the basics. Brands like Royal Enfield and Indian are introducing models that are affordable, lightweight, and easy to maintain, echoing the classic bikes that older riders fondly remember. Some manufacturers are also actively partnering with independent garages to offer maintenance training and repair workshops. This helps riders feel more in control of their machines rather than being dependent on dealership services. The message is clear: motorcycles should be about independence and personal connection, not corporate dependence. Younger riders are being courted with bikes designed for urban commuting and everyday use. These models are practical, fuel-efficient, and offer minimal but essential tech. Customization options are prioritized, allowing riders to make the bike their own without spending a fortune. Manufacturers are also making amends by openly acknowledging past mistakes. Public statements and improved customer service practices are attempts to repair the damaged relationship with the riding community. By focusing on what riders actually want, reliable, straightforward bikes, brands are working to restore their lost credibility. To survive, manufacturers must create bikes that riders actually want: simple, reliable, and customizable. By listening to the community, manufacturers are reigniting the passion that made motorcycling iconic. Motorcycling will endure as long as riders reclaim the spirit of the open road, guided by their own passion rather than corporate agendas. So what do you think? Can Harley-Davidson bounce back, or is the damage too great? Let us know in the comments. And if you like this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button for more real stories from the motorcycle world.